Cool. Okay, so I am recording. You should see my presentation slide, and we'll go ahead and get started. So hi everyone, my name is Paul Graham, and I just wanted to share a little bit quick background about myself. Originally started, really getting into product, working with a commercial real estate application, where we helped create an MVP for what is now Apto data, which has taken about I think 17 or 19% of the revenue of Apto as it's grown over the past couple years. Also, I've been in a job board kind of organization where we used machine learning to develop an algorithm to help with matching both quantitative and qualitative bidirectional for job seekers and job organizations. Then also used artificial intelligence just to kind of learn a lot of different trends in industries, hiring, all that sort of jazz. And as of late, I've been at Personify headquarters here in Austin, working in the event space, so conference and exhibition management, really trying to continue in-person organizations and collaborations, but then also, of course, adding more robust features to online events, being that virtual is kind of the name of the game these days. I've also done a lot of different kind of consulting projects and opportunities, but I'll save that kind of bore and really get into the details. I'm excited to really get into this because of I just think it's something needed really within the product community. So what we'll go over today is what Myers-Briggs is for about 10-15 seconds, really focus on the problem that I've been trying to solve, share the resource and resources that I've utilized in order to create what I'll be presenting, just to give a baseline and an understanding. We'll go through the 7 types, and then lastly, collaboration. So that's twofold. Yes, continue to fill out the surveys for ProductCamp Austin, but specifically ensure that if there are questions, follow-ups, or say there's something within one of these descriptors that are absolutely off point based on your experience, absolutely want to know, because this, as I see, is a community type of presentation than it is just me saying, hey, here's the research, obviously taking user feedback throughout it. So quick overview of what Myers-Briggs is. So really they had 4 dichotomies based on a theory that was developed where Isabel and actually her mother, interestingly enough, created these 16 distinctive personality types that result in the interactions for the different dichotomies. How that then is going to translate into our problem is, again, with my job board background experience, I've realized that there's a misalignment between job boards and job seekers that also translates into hiring managers as well as recruiters. And the biggest thing I've seen specifically is just you see, for example, product management title, right? Or product manager, right? But there's a lot of details within that job description or need within the company that a lot of times, again, there's just going to be misalignment. You really might need more of a technical product manager than, say, a design sort of focused product manager. And so I'll go through those 7 types, again, that relates to Myers-Briggs. I do also want to share that in order to have this be a full kind of conducted research sort of study, if you will, there's really 2 hypotheses that are going to be defined. One will essentially resolve today, and the other will just be kind of an ongoing conversation to be resolved in the future. First being that we want to identify the 7 types. So I've used 13 about different sources in order to aggregate what those 7 types are, and then added strengths, weaknesses, functional skills when they're needed, typical job role, as well as just an overview. We obviously have the 16 personality types for Myers-Briggs, and so we obviously need to ensure that the 7 are concrete and foundational before we then intertwine the types of personalities within Myers-Briggs to the types of product management. Last thing is really just the scope, only focused on SaaS product management, didn't extend it into like program management or project manager roles. Temporarily included some small details as a product owner, just because sometimes there are, for example, product management positions that note actually managing the backlog with prioritization, that in a lot more detail than maybe another product manager might have. So ultimately, maybe the organization really needs a product owner, not a product manager, but they think they need a product manager. So it's really kind of mixing up kind of the status quo. I put here in the presentation link, really at the end of October, I'll be releasing the survey, i.e. you as a product manager, possibly potential product manager, would take this survey with 10 different questions of, are you more B2B or B2C? Are you focused on an internal product, possibly external? Different variations, similar of course to kind of Myers-Briggs, and then you would get an output. Finalizing that, but again, want to ensure that what I present is going to be the correct definitions of things of what other people have also seen. Again, that way, this kind of recommendation engine is beneficial to everyone in the community, not just based on 12 sources that have been found. So with that, we'll get into it. Here are the 7 types, and special thank you to 12 individuals actually across the world who have helped support this from kind of the research that has been done. Some context is that with the kind of final deliverable that I mentioned with all those different pieces like strengths and weaknesses, things like that, I have all of those cited. What we'll go through today is just briefly high level overview, just so you kind of get a good idea of growth product manager, what does that look like, or a design product manager. It's just not going to go into the level of depth I would like, simply for the sake of time, but also as a potential nugget for you to reach back out or collaborate with me, and or really just put your email in the previous slide that I had. It's really just a Google form to put your email so I can just send you the final detailed version. So here are the 7 types. We have a technical product manager, analytic, marketing, which I also included here. May not be traditional, or it's not as well known, but it does for sure exist and is very different. Growth, visionary, internal, design, and then of course I mentioned product owner, which is not a PM, but still needs to be acknowledged. So with questions for this, I would just ask, let's keep it high level. If you have feedback on a specific type where you're, hey, I'm identify as a technical product manager, but this really needs to change, put that in the feedback in the survey. I just want to make sure the time we have is spent on kind of high level overview of different things, not a specific piece, because we could spend probably half the day going through each of these. All right, I think I've teased you enough. Let's get into it. So technical product manager, I have found, are by nature technical, very obvious, right? But they're traditionally former developers or programmers of some kind. It's also noted that they're traditionally the best, where they're able to then also collaborate and understand what the business needs, not just the best, most optimal code to write that could be utilized in the future. They're typically needed where organizations need to be, improved, or maybe it is an initial building of a product, because again, they have that kind of business sense, and a theory of build it and users will come. There may not be as, say, much product discovery or user sort of discovery than some of the other types. Gave some examples of the type of products they would typically manage or interact with. And it also was noted that they might be potentially more of an engineering manager than a product manager, depending on a couple factors within a company. Next, we have an analytic product manager, or what I define as a data product manager, but the data product manager and design product manager obviously would get confusing, so we'll go ahead with analytics. They are a cousin of the technical product manager, obviously being with the technical background. However, they're going to be more focused on, say, querying within, a SQL, probably not Excel, because there's, more data, but just some sort of technical tool that they're going to utilize within their product for metrics that they're either looking at internally or externally. Again, noted for former, business or data analysts, possibly used to be on the data science team, and again, we're typically the best. So if you're looking at this thinking, man, I could possibly be this for my background, because I know, some Python. That doesn't necessarily mean you're in this group. That just means that you could associate with this group. Tend to be the most informed. That's because they're able to look at the data and they're understanding how different departments or how the overall company, but also the product is doing across the entire platform. And of course, balance the skills of business and technical acumen, again, similar to a technical product manager. So when needed type of companies, so really complex software products that are able to have data traditionally in more of a B2C type of setting, but just simply being that there's more data traditionally within B2C, right? If you have 10,000 customers versus 20 on a B2B, obviously there tends to be a little bit more data to then play with, manipulate, understand where trends and future roadmap items may pivot. And then also gave a couple other examples as well. Again, since it's a cousin, you can see how there's a little bit of overlap. Next, we have a marketing product manager. So would obviously have a background in some sort of advertising, PR, marketing related, but I've also seen sales, which is interesting. Sales being close to the consumer, or even someone in a customer service type role could potentially move into marketing again, just as long as they're writing, whether it be technical writing or more, let's call it marketing writing, is in tune with what the organization needs. Tend to be very strategic and are very closely able to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the product, right? Obviously, to then market and understand. Biggest thing I've at least found, and didn't find the most amount of information with the marketing product manager. So if you are one, I would love to talk to you a little more, where they tend to work closely with the product team, but they don't tend to oversee more technical details like a backlog or something to that effect. They're more entwined with a different type of product manager. They aren't tending to be their own type of standalone type as some of these other ones are. Next, growth product manager. So this is one of the ones that I identify with just from my experience with doing testing or A/B testing. That is specifically trying to use the least amount of resources to grow maybe some sort of metric, and being creative on how that is grown. So again, focused on, as I mentioned, testing, for example, focusing on metrics on increasing users, maybe their engagement, testing the MVP to ensure that it does fit, but are very focused on delivery at all costs. One thing that I didn't put on here that I thought was fascinating is that specifically in say a smaller company, they potentially are so focused on delivery, or again, excuse me, it could also be at a larger organization that's focused on a small initiative, say a different vertical of the product or additional addition for the product. They're willing to kind of burn some bridges with stakeholders or people in the organization, either to that extreme, or they're just willing to be so focused on delivery that they'll just punt things to say next quarter or next year, because of their focus on delivery at all costs. And the at all costs was very much underlined, but it doesn't always have to be. They are needed when they are, excuse me, I lost my notes here. Okay, so yeah, very much heavily rely on feedback, and that's again through things like A/B testing. Traditionally, it's quantitative because then you can map the specific customer journey based on, say, conversion rates or interaction, time saved, things like that. Again, all data points, and are very focused on the needs and wants of the customer, again, such that the tests that are running are optimal, of which produces better results. So pretty intuitive and makes sense, but again, does need to be pointed out. All right. Next, we have a visionary product manager. They typically are former, or maybe are, the founders of a startup or small company by all means. They traditionally have an MBA. Doesn't mean you again have to, but they're very business focused. They see a need within a niche, or possibly creating a new niche, or even trying to take away some of current market based on product market fit with customers, and trying to bring them over. When needed, traditionally lean, fast, growing startup for obvious reasons, where you have some sort of resources, you have, of course, by definition, the vision, but you're really trying to go out and get traction. You don't know how much how much of a need there really is potentially. So again, they tend to be a little bit more earlier stage, because anything is possible. We could pivot this way, do this, etc. And kind of see what happens, of sorts. But they're a little bit more qualitative in terms of, say, feedback, than again a growth product manager who's going to be more focused on the quantitative. All right, internal product managers. So this is one that I found interesting because it wasn't really shared a lot, but there were a lot of details that I saw the need to actually create. And that is for an internal product. So specifically with things like ERPs or CRMs. It was also noted for communication channels, or even communities, like a marketplace or something like that, where this product is traditionally internal, stakeholders, internal operations, and tend to be within large organizations for obvious reasons, where the operations need to be streamlined. There's enough people working within a product. Think of Salesforce, for example, right? Within a large org, you have a Salesforce instance that needs to be optimized, and you need to have someone who's not just going to be kind of owning the experience, similar to like a project manager or product owner, but more visionary to say, hey, in this next 2 to 5 years, how do we want this internal product to operate, such that other things are easier. So I've seen this as a growing trend, and again, kind of expanded this and lumped some of the different criteria that didn't fit into a couple of the other ones. Are also noted as, at least what one individual defined as, a workflow warrior. A little bit of a tongue twister. All right, last one, and definitely not intentional, but it is a design product manager. So very focused on the user experience, tend to be extroverted. What was just a note, because of their love to talk, argue with a lot of different departments and teams. Obviously, you'd hope it would not be users, but by all means, that can be where it's kind of build it and they will come, or you don't know what you need yet, try this, right? In some ways, this is the Henry Ford or Steve Jobs type of focus that comes into play, that are so focused that it's kind of at all costs. But in terms of when needed, I found it tends to be an early stage type of organizations. Again, doesn't have to be design. Also, is an integral part. Just want to give this little caveat. That doesn't mean design is not focused in all the other ones. It just means in terms of design that it is an organization that is design above all else. Examples were Snapchat, Instagram type of organizations that do very qualitative type of things that may not make sense, right? But it's a feeling, it's a market, it's a again, design user experience, and makes sense obviously in terms of design. You obviously want it to have a better experience, but creating it may not seem the most logical, is the point I was trying to get across. And then in terms of communication, it was noted are both fluent and direct with developers and creative team, really to kind of bridge that gap between creative and kind of technical in some sort of hybrid fashion. So that is the 7 different types. I'll leave here in terms of collaboration with my email, my LinkedIn, as well as opening to connect with anyone, being with optimizing processes, utilizing data, or creating solutions that scale. I attribute to more the analytical and the growth hacker type of product manager, and so happy to speak more about my experience and learn from others in the community as well at a different time. The last thing I'll mention is just, again, this kind of survey that I have. Again, it's just name and email, really just so that way I can share the actual survey with you when it's done. And there's also a button to say, hey, if you really want to provide some feedback and actually collaborate with me, then that would be great as well. No pressure by all means, but that is what we have. So I'll go ahead and stop and see if there are questions. I'm sure there are. I haven't looked at the chat, but I've seen some kind of things pop up. But regardless, thanks everyone for your time, and definitely looking, like I said, to continue this conversation. I will mention. Yep. So again, I'm just quickly seeing this question on how these overlap with the product manager types. And so that is a little teaser I have here, which you can't see, kind of intentional in the sense of how these would then attribute to the types of Myers-Briggs. Again, with 2 hypotheses, we first need to confirm that these are the 7 types and round out all the details of them before we then attribute them to the Myers-Briggs type of personalities. But I will share this, where, for example, I found a technical product manager is a INTJ, or a design focused tends to be an ISTP. Just to pick 2 random ones. There were a couple that were kind of hard to define. So again, we'll just continue. Yeah, certainly. I can share that from Hector's comment in here. Cool.
Paul, this
and
is
can you
Hector.
also put that in the Slack channel, Red?
Yes, I can.
Excellent.
Go ahead if there's a question.
Yes, this is Hector. Paul.
Hey, Hector.
Hi. Do you have any data already for growth product managers? What their profile or profiles tend to be, their personality types?
Yeah. So again, just for here, let me hold on. And again, wanted to. Okay. So for growth, I tend to define that they're traditionally extroverted, right? Because they have to be a little bit more commanding, I'll use the word, to ensure that they are focused on delivery. So ENTJ, ESTP tended to be what they're focused on. Really, the thinking was a big attribute. But again, could be others, certainly. So.
How many subjects total are you looking for during your beta testing of this survey?
I don't have a set amount because I'm not sure how many people I can truly get. I would say at least, another 10 is what I would be kind of focused on, because I'm really trying to understand at what stage is this product, right? I've really attributed this product or really attributed this to as a product, right? Where it's, hey, this is almost an MVP. Here are the descriptors of everything. And through that can see, hey, are we, almost done? Do we almost have it? Or do we need to kind of iterate more? From at least the work I've done, seems as though we're pretty close to being complete. But again, don't want to make those, assumptions because you could potentially build the wrong thing, right? Let me share this link though.
All right, and we have some other questions coming in. Are you familiar with Canoe, which are 5 personality types? Do you plan to later map to those? That's useful because the social marketers use that. So also, are you more into the social marketing aspect? It doesn't sound like so.
So of course, when I type Canoe in my Google, it shows me places to rent.
You're also showing everyone else, so I don't know if you want to stop your screen sharing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely here. Yeah, big 5. Okay, yeah, no, makes sense. I haven't. I'd actually be curious if that person would be willing to come off mute and maybe see if they, I don't know, just maybe have a quick discussion about it to see if maybe I should attribute this more to Canoe or if it should be both, or what they think. You're happy also to put it in the chat too. Yeah, there's Ocean too. Yeah, okay. Canoe wasn't considered to finish that statement. So one other quick thing as other people are thinking of additional questions is I'll just share kind of the research piece that has been completed. You might have looked at these slides and said, hey, like there's 2 bullet points. This doesn't really help me. And I understand that. But there is a lot more in the sauce. So here, ideally, we can see my screen of the technical product manager, for example. Again, overview, when needed, strengths, weaknesses, and then type of job function. And this has been done for every one of them. I tried to get both strengths and weaknesses, well, not just for everyone, but also at least 5. That way, again, it's kind of attributed. I'll also share just as a teaser, this. Okay. So again, we should be able to see my document 2 screen, which just has the different types of Myers-Briggs and what they potentially could fit based on research I've done into these buckets. Obviously, this could change just with more research. And by all means, I also wanted to mention, please scrutinize this as much as possible. I hope the presentation was beneficial, but I'd really love to hear if, say one of these types or one of the descriptions I had for one of these types was completely off base, except all constructive criticisms. And I'll also put this in the slideshow. I just found myself working a lot more on the survey than I did these pieces. So
yeah, that's great. If you can put it publicly in the chat too, not just to me, that would be great. If that's something that you are willing to share with everybody.
Yeah, I'm so
and
sorry.
Then how does this help companies during the hiring process? Like you're kind of going over that a little bit with your document here, and to piggyback off of Michael's question further, curious about how this might give you different types of diversity.
Certainly. So in terms of hiring decision, if let's initially start with first a hypothesis, right? We in the organization have a very, say, technical product, needs someone very technical. Again, we'll continue on a technical product manager, i.e. we should have that type of individual, right? My intention would also then to be eventually continuing to understand what skills are needed within that, not just a, hey, you're the best developer, right? But what, again, type of skills you can, being such that I, as someone in product, say, looking for a new position, could then say, hey, I attribute to this, so I should try to find jobs like this, and I should have conversations like this, right? As I mentioned in the end, hey, I am growth and analytical, right? So if you and your organization need a design type of product manager, we're just not gonna have the best conversation because it's what is needed, right? So it helps the company and the user or job seeker, if you will. And then in terms of hiring, in terms of personalities, from a large scale, that still helps. Again, these are frameworks, not definitive hard fast rules. They are very flowy, and so ultimately you'd be able to say, for example, we did this at First Sync to say someone in sales is probably going to have an outgoing personality, right? Therefore, that being as a leading indicator, you're probably going to be this type of Myers-Briggs individual. Don't hire just on that, but by all means, it could be a factor either to know or to test. Hey, maybe as during the interview process, they take a Myers-Briggs test. So up to definitely the hiring manager in the company. But again, the hope is really to define and then refine, and then see if that fit is in terms of personality. Last thing I'll mention is at First Sync, we intentionally did a qualitative personality career, not career, sorry, a culture fit, because obviously people that fit within a culture, fit within that type of team environment that say needs to be extroverted and is XYZ, tends to do better, but also stays longer and does a better job, things of that sort. So
definitely culture fit's super important.
Yeah.
So to Hector's question and kind of outlining what you're using this for,
Yeah.
what's your kind of planned outcome with all the research you're gathering?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of alluding to something here.
Sure. So I think the two things I was focused on is one, I kind of wanted to do something for the community, right? Looking to meet just more people within the product community here in Austin and have conversation and discussion. And again, tell me one of these is just absolutely off base. But the other thing is then to extend it more into either some sort of publication or something like that. I've had a couple conversations with folks at Indeed or alike, again, just with background and what have you. Not to say that's going to be the end all fit, where for example, Indeed's going to do Myers-Briggs with this, right? Again, very just too much of a framework, right? But for sure would like to understand maybe where other this could be implemented. Again, my basis is research and also understanding myself better. And so I've also talked with a couple organizations or companies to implement this in their private kind of consulting practice that help promote and coach product managers. So a lot of applications. The world is the oyster. So definitely Hector or others, if you have other thoughts on collaboration or just on where to put it, let me know.
Yeah, and then Bill, Bill's also asking, or I guess more of a comment, that it's good to use Canoe because you can kind of merge design thinking and machine learning and.
Sure. Okay.
Also, he's saying that there's a lot of new stuff being written by Ocean.
Yeah.
So those are some other resources that maybe you want to talk about. And
sure.
Everyone is welcome to comment or open up their mics if you want to discuss this a little bit more, and also to use the PCA 25-red channel. Don't think this is just me moderating everything.
Certainly. Yeah, definitely would encourage others to, speak up and continue to have the conversation now that we have at least a little bit of time, if anything comes to mind. And yeah, thanks, Hector. Appreciate it. And Bill, appreciate it as well. Yeah, I'll
so
definitely look at Canoe more.
The Google Doc is shared there
cool.
in the chat, and then you're going to go ahead and share that as well on the red channel.
Yes, I will need to find that browser, but I will certainly do that.
Okay. Bill is following up. Myers-Briggs is focused more on team dynamics. I expect this is how you got into this. I see the Canoe as more of a general world and preparing systems for all 5. A team of all 5, if it is talked out, might have a more end-use oriented result, get more
certainly
coverage out of the market.
Yeah, no, and I can definitely see that for sure. Yeah, I love that this is continued to be iterated. It's a great experience within product management, right? To see what people or users are thinking. Hey, we need more of this. Okay, great. Let's go with that. But Myers-Briggs was the initial framework that helped me define these types, because I've just seen either poor hiring decisions or job searching misalignments that are frustrating. And yeah, it's almost like similar to how Pandora defined different songs within different genres and classifications of that, right? And making that library.
Everybody's got to have the algorithm of some kind to go off of, right, to base it on.
I've managed 3 within the job search space, so it's a fun.
So I have a question, actually.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
If you have experiences or have looked at integrating either like the colored hats or the color code in general, those are like 2 different other. It seems like there's a lot of them out there, but
yeah,
kind of the differences between personality versus like work styles and things like that.
Certainly, yeah, and I think I mean because that's a great point. I think what this is really bringing light to me is that certainly Myers-Briggs is just one of them, right? And so if going through then the research that I briefly showed within that Word doc, I can then understand, hey, maybe what is actually presented and on the World Wide Web for others to see and use is hey, this person tends to be more extroverted and tends to be more this and this. So that way you as an individual can take your best, archetype of personalities or humans or, other, I don't know, business type of frameworks, and kind of plug them in, because there are a lot, and I'm not sure if I'd be able to cover all of them in the level of detail that I would hope to. I've almost tried to make this like a PhD type research project. Possibly might just be because some of my friends are currently doing their PhD projects, so might be spending too much time with them during quarantine type endeavors, but that's okay. Again, really just trying to make sure the deliverable is the most beneficial for everyone, and in some ways make it a by no means does it have to be, but conceptually, a Marty Kagan kind of definition of what things are or could be within product. That way we can all just have better conversations between again, organizations, individuals, hiring processes, things like that. So we'll see again what the end result is, but this is at least the meat and potatoes. So
awesome,
I really do
awesome writer too that you're referencing there.
Yeah, it's just how to throw some name out there, right?
Right.
That or my alter ego of sorts, the Paul Graham of the Y Combinator, which is not me. And I apologize if that was a disappointment to anyone, but happy to talk about that disappointment too. He's a great individual and enjoy his work in addition to his name. So,
so can you talk more about the diversity inclusion piece, and because that's kind of a big buzz right now, right?
Certainly. What I would say is that, I think it frames it well, right? Where this is what the organization needs. And then the company, again, let's say hiring process would then have diversity inclusion within that set. It's more of refining the business, details and outcomes, right? What is the job to be done? The job is very design focused. Therefore, we find people with design type backgrounds or have a very keen sense for it. I've seen, for example, a product manager who was, oh goodness, she was a child career counselor or therapist or marriage counselor or something, and wrote an article to say that has really helped me in product management these ways. So it's not to say like they have to have the design background, right? It's more, again, how they think, how they operate, what would they prioritize, how is that roadmap going to look, what is going to be executed, and then what does the company need? That's going to be the key. And then again, having that diversity within. For those who are interested in diversity, would definitely recommend in addition just to normal type of understanding, if you will, ton of great resources out there. But there's a book in terms of the data behind trying to be diverse actually becomes very strict and causes, I don't know why I can't think of the word. The book is called Weapons of Math, M-A-T-H, Destruction. And so specifically, for example, at First Sync, we found that by giving too many data points, you can actually be discriminatory is the word I was trying to use, because you're so focused on the data. So it's definitely a blended, want to be careful, but data is by certainly all means helpful. So those would kind of be my initial thoughts with diversity, but it is a great point. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because again, I don't want this to turn into hard set rules that we have to follow. There have to have a design background, right? It's again just the conceptual nature of it.
No, definitely. But to that point, do notice that there are certain personality types that will tend to fit in those different categories, and those might be based on social constructs, but that's a bigger conversation.
Certainly, yeah. And I'll just take 10 seconds to say that, so I myself am an ENTJ, however, I'm low extrovert. And so, maybe on some day I could maybe be an I, right? Maybe after being on Zoom calls for, 14 hours a day. But ultimately, those again should be the piece. Yeah, analysis paralysis. Absolutely, Hector. Definitely agree. So there's definitely a time to let the gut feel and the person and the experience kind of take over, not just the numbers. So, which I've had to learn being a very analytical individual. And one thing I actually did think of, if you've not taken StrengthsFinder 2.0, it's another type of framework, right? I'd be interested to possibly expand the scope on myself and see, hey, maybe how that intertwines. with maybe these different types. I'm not sure how much it would, but
Yeah, the
I've found that.
Clifton Strengths Finder.
Correct. Yeah, I found that incredibly beneficial. I actually went back to school only because I found that my analytical was number one. And I always knew that, but really that affirmation said, hey, you know, this is a key strength of mine. Let's go learn some code. So we'll just encourage people to take that, but I'll also put that into consideration is what I'm meaning to say. But